What's up, guys, and welcome to week 17 of Flex Friday. Andy and I are coming at you. It is championship week, and for me personally, Andy, I'm just hanging out on the beach. We made it. We made it to the championship, and at this point, you're almost just flipping a coin, and Andy and I are going to be rooting with you guys. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm in 2 championships out of the 5 leagues that I was really, going for. A couple rebuilding dynasty rosters. One I locked up the first overall pick, so that's solid. So yeah, we're feeling pretty good. Breece Hall got me off to a nice start yesterday, so we're feeling good about that. The mojo's flowing. Some of it's going to come down to a little Packers Vikings on Sunday night, which is always exciting and also a little stressful. I'm playing against my brother-in-law for the championship, and he's starting Jordan Love, which is huge mind games against me because I'm going to be so torn about what I want to happen. And I also have Ty Chandler, so I don't even know. Like, my loyalties and allegiances are going to be so all over the place. I'm a little bit of a mess, but we'll bring it in.
Yeah, it's a weird week, man. I mean, to start off, we actually had some very high scores in the Thursday night game, which I feel like just maybe this is just like a placebo effect, but I feel like that never happens. I don't really know, but I feel like most of the time I'm disappointed with any one of my players that is in a Thursday night game. But Breece Hall, Flacco, Jerome Ford. I played Cleveland D in 2 leagues. I was stoked.
Yeah.
Some other guys came up. Even Elijah Moore, before he went down injury, had a little game. And this is going to be a fun Sunday, or just fun. The way the games are spread out is interesting. There's the Saturday game. There are, I'm pretty sure, 11 early window games on Sunday. So almost all of your championship is going to be happening at the same time. Red Zone is going to be nuts in the witching hour.
Man. The Octobox is perfect when you have 8. But to have 11, I mean, I don't even know what the word. Deca's 10. I don't even know what the word for 11 is.
I don't know. Scott's going to be recommending multiple screens, I'm sure, just to view everything.
Yeah, it's chaos.
But Andy and I got you for the last week of the playable games this season. So stay tuned after the intro, and Andy and I are going to give you a list of guys that will lead you to glory. Okay, so Andy, get us kicked off with your first guy for week 17, championship week.
All right, well, we're starting out with the chef. I'm going Brandin Cooks. It's a 52-point over-under Saturday night, which you love. Hopefully gets you off to a nice lead. I mean, the Lions just allowed 373 yards to Nick Mullins. Their pass D is 28th DVOA over the past 6 weeks, but has been good against the run. So I feel like Dallas is going to have to pass to win this game, becoming kind of a must-win game if they still want to try and win the division. You're going to have to score points. That Detroit offense is humming. And, this is the way that they're going to have to attack it. And this is still a little bit of a deeper play. Hopefully you have somebody a little bit better than Cooks, but in my league, I have JSN, Deontay Johnson, Drake London. One of those guys has to slide in there. And I'm kind of I might play Cooks over some of those guys. I know he hasn't been great as of recently, but just this matchup feels like one where he's going to have his opportunities. So I would be pretty tempted to play him in that situation. And yeah, so I'll roll with the chef, man. Hopefully he cooks you up something good.
Yeah, I like it, man. I mean, he was one of my guys last week. I wouldn't say that he wowed you, but he got you 10, 11 points in a PPR league. He got in the end zone, and I think it's the same exact reasoning for this week. Is just it's a game where they're going to have to score points, and when Dallas throws, Cooks is the 2A. I mean, him and Ferguson, I'll call the 2A, 2B. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is tiers above both of them, but the
Yeah.
ball is going to go to someone else, and they're probably going to have to throw against Detroit. There's going to be a lot of points in this game, or at least hopefully. I'm excited for Saturday night. This should be a fun game.
Me too.
A lot of leads or deficits will be created Saturday night with all the fantasy guys going in that game.
Oh, yeah. And another thing, too, is I've realized it's been a couple weeks where you've picked a guy, they've done pretty well, and then just exploded. And so that's kind of also what I'm going on. It's just Sam picked him last week, which means he had a solid game, and then this week he's going to be like the wide receiver 3.
Do not remind me, man. I actually have been noticing that. I remember, I picked Pickens a couple weeks ago, 35 points. I picked there was another one a couple weeks ago. I honestly don't remember it. Like Zay Flowers, I think was.
Yeah, it's just they do okay, and then the next week it's like boom, massive.
It's been. I mean, I'm on to something. Is the thing. I may not be fully there, but I'm on to something.
Your edge is too sharp. You're too cutting. You just get there a little
just
early.
ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. If you're picking these guys up, you're killing it because you get them for the week after. My first guy of the week is going to be someone that I was kind of coming in, going to teeter-totter because we didn't know the exact status, but it looks like Josh Jacobs is doubtful again. So I'm just going to assume he's not going to play. I really don't think they have a reason to play him if he's hurt. And the reason why is Zamir White has looked very good without him in there. I mean, Zamir White, a guy from, 2 seasons ago? A lot of people were drafting him, early second round dynasty league, a lot of hype as a backup or just someone that might take over for Josh Jacobs. And we really hadn't got to see him. But the past 2 weeks, man, RB12 and RB15, 16 and 14 and a half points. Last week, 145 rushing yards. I'm not a huge yards per carry guy, but 6.5 yards per carry. That's good. That's a good number.
Yeah.
And I don't really see that changing with Josh Jacobs out. They're trying to run the ball. They're playing good defense. They're playing that old school football that everyone laughs about, but it's working for the Raiders right now with Pierce. And I mean, I don't think Zamir White is some sort of top 5 dynasty running back, but he gets more than he's blocked for by a little bit. He's not perfect, but he's getting the yards and he's not easy to bring down, and he's the goal line back. I think those are all positives for someone you're looking for in your flex position.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got some wiggle and some juice. I mean, if I would have played him over Achane last week, I'd be playing for 3 championships this week. So, if he's the guy, Indy 20th rushed UVOA over the past 6 weeks, so they're very susceptible that way. Like you said, Pierce, definitely an intense old school football kind of guy. He's a punch you in the mouth, and we were talking about it before we got on. And what did you say? He's talking about.
He had a sideline report where he was literally telling just like the girl interviewing him at halftime, and he was like, "Oh, we want to be violent." And I was sitting there being like, most of the coaches are just like, "Yeah, we're gonna try hard." No, we are going to come at them. And I was like, it's kind of a breath of fresh air, and I appreciate it, man. I hope he gets the job. So, who's your second player for week 17?
All right, so moving on, and this guy's being started in 70% of leagues. I think he should be started in more than that, and that is Rashee Rice. I feel like this is such a get-right spot for the Chiefs. They've lost 3 out of the last 4. Obviously, Mahomes had 2 turnovers back-to-back last week, got beat by the Raiders. I feel like they are going to come out of the gates hot, especially playing the Bengals. There's definitely a rivalry there. Even without Joe Burrow. And the Bengals, 30th DVOA in the last 6 games against the pass. They've also lost their best D lineman run stopper. So, but who could also generate pressures. I feel like the Chiefs are going to want to put up points. I'm going to be betting on Patrick Mahomes 3 touchdowns. There's a good chance that I think Rashee Rice gets one. He's the guy. It's proven time and time again. These other receivers are just making so many mistakes out there. And even as a rookie, he seems to be the most consistent one. So I feel like the Chiefs are just going to explode this week. This is more of a gut call. There's some analytics to back it up, but I have a feeling that he's just going to have a monster week.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at last week, Pittsburgh played him, right? And Pickens just absolutely torched Cincy last week. Yeah. They're just banged up, not the best. Exactly. Not the best second. They're banged up in the secondary, not the best tackling, good yards after the catch. And that's what Rice has been doing. He's been great after the catch with the ball in his hands. And as much as none of us really want to believe this, like, he really has been the one for Kansas City. I'm not saying that there can't be a resurgence for Travis Kelce. I do truthfully believe that he's a little banged up. Let's not forget, like, he had that ankle injury earlier this year and he didn't miss any games. And just like, I just have a hard time believing that at 34, like, he doesn't feel that a little bit. Just every once in a while, like, like, that's some players play through those things and they don't really say anything about it. But I'm with you on Rice. He looks great and he's just been used so often in that Kansas City offense that he's going to be someone I wouldn't get away from.
Yeah. And I mean, I just turned 31 and if I sprain my ankle, there is no way that I would be just like going to do anything, like take the dog for a walk and be like, my ankle. And he's out there running routes and playing one of the most violent, aggressive sports on the planet. So
my feet hurt today because I was breaking in new shoes. Like literally, like that's
maybe.
Yeah, I was these shoes, man. I'm breaking them in. My feet hurt a little bit. They're heavier than I'm used to.
It's work.
But my number 2, I just brought him up. Same logic from last week, but I just think you're going to ride this hot streak, and that's going to be George Pickens at Seattle. I just think Rudolph is starting again, and after last week, he has to at least understand that throwing the ball Pickens' direction, no matter how much of a baby people may say he is, the dude can ball, man. If you throw him the ball, he is very good with the ball, going up to high point it, and he's sneaky good after the catch because he's got big, long arms. He stiff arms guys. He's got a little wiggle, and he can really break it. So I just don't see how Pickens doesn't get another, he got 6 targets last week. Obviously, he had 195 yards. I'm not saying he's having 195 yards and a couple TDs, but Seattle plays well at home. But some of their secondary has kind of been in turmoil, even though they have some stars in Woolen and Witherspoon back there. Like, Woolen has been coming in and out of the lineup because I think Pete just is like trying to make him prove himself, even though you looked great last year, obviously. But I just think they're gonna throw, and I think Pickens is the guy. It's a long shot. It's an upside play. Like, it's kind of in that Brandin Cooks realm, right? I think there's a lot of choices. Like, if I was choosing between Zamir and Pickens, I would go Zamir. But if I'm down 35 points, I don't think Zamir is going to score 35 points where maybe Pickens does. And that's kind of the choices we are left with, just depending on what happened. Maybe you went up against Brees, Ford, Flacco, and Brown's D, and you're just staring down the barrel of like a 50-point projected loss. And you're like, I got to do something.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. And, you say you only had 6 targets, but you can't get any more targets when you just run it 80 yards to the house because the drive ends, the other team gets the ball. So, that's obviously he was an absolute monster. Seattle has been not great against the pass. They were pretty good early this year and recently 18th DVOA. So a little under the middle of the road. And, I think he was fired up after everybody talking about him last week, and I wouldn't be surprised if that continues this week. I mean, dude doesn't want to block, but, man, if you get the ball to him, he's a monster.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to your last guy for the week before we move into streamers.
Cool. Well, I'm going with Ty Chandler. I'm starting him. He's only being started in about 40% of leagues right now. And, last week, fairly mediocre week. 17 yards, but at least he got in the end zone, so he gave you something. But also, playing the Lions, they were down quite a bit and just basically threw the ball the entire game. But this week they get to play the Green Bay Football Packers, and that could not come at a better time for anyone on this offense. I mean, it's Jaron Hall's first start. The last 3 quarterbacks that Green Bay has played against have had career games against them. And I feel like they're going to still want to make it easier on Hall, and they're going to want to hand the ball off. And Green Bay's run D is bottom 6 DVOA, pass D also in that range. So they are susceptible from any kind of offense. So I feel like he's going to get going. And I mean, I honestly like a lot of the guys on this Minnesota team this week. I am not feel like that could wind up being a high scoring game, or at least on one side of the ball, a high scoring game. It's in Minnesota. It's always crazy playing in there. So I think Ty Chandler's a good start this week.
And just this doesn't equate to points, but it's the last game of the week. It's the last game of the week. It's Sunday night.
Little New
I'm
Year's
with you
Eve.
though. I think Jaren Hall. The idea would be is they probably go slightly more conservative, or at least in the beginning of the game. I'm sure they're not going to just unleash Jaren Hall, so they'll probably ride Chandler, who when they rode him a couple of weeks ago, he looked really good in his bigger week. Not last week like you said. Luckily, he did get in the end zone before that game kind of got out of control. But Chandler's looked really good, and I'm just not scared of the Green Bay defense, like you said. And those two things, I don't really see how you don't play Chandler, especially with some of these running backs going out. Some of them just not really performing in the way you'd like. So Chandler's definitely someone I think everyone should consider in their flex. For my last guy for the week, this is probably the grossest one I'm feeling. Andy and I try to not repeat names that we say week to week. Like, I really wanted to go Gus Edwards again and just be like, just write it, dude. He's their goal line back. And I still think that as a note, that's not my pick, but I think Gus Edwards is good play. But I'm going to go someone who you honestly may be able to just pick up off the waiver wire, and that's going to be Jerry Jeudy. And before you say pick up off the waiver wire, like, oh, he's not on the waiver wire. The dude hasn't scored over 10 points since week 8. He could be on your waiver wire 100%. But this one's just, look, they're going to have a QB change. I don't really know exactly what to expect, but Chargers 30th against fantasy wide receivers. And no Cortland Sutton. So Judy's going to operate. He had 5 targets last week. That was basically all without Sutton. New England's a better defense than the Chargers are, though. So I think that's just kind of it. He's probably going to operate as their number 1 wide receiver. New quarterback, so any schemed first reads probably are going to go to Jeudy instead of Sutton. And this is just one that I think he may have the volume in a game that could just get weird. Sometimes with the teams, like neither one of them's really in it, there can be some points, like more than you'd think. And especially this week 17, like we're all going to be focused on like the Baltimore game, Baltimore-Miami, and just watch this Chargers-Broncos game be like 35-30, and you keep looking down at your phone, and you're just like, are you kidding me? Easton Stick scored again, and now Stidham's dry. It happens every year. Like, the grossest games are the ones you're always facing the guys in the gross games, but here's your chance to get a player in the gross game. 17.
That's the worst when the guy's projected like 7 points. You're like, oh, I'm so glad he put that guy in. And then it's like just absolutely that's the guy who's going to wind up torching you. And, I feel like the Chargers definitely got a bump last week when they played the Bills from firing their head coach. I mean, they came out hot, ready to play. That was a pretty insane game going down to the wire. But now, I mean, at this point, we're a week later. They've had that bump. And, yeah, I feel like, Stidham's coming out, got something to prove. So, yeah, I feel like if Judy's the number 1, then he's a solid move this week.
Okay, so let's move on to our streamers for the week. Andy, let's go with tight end first. Who's someone that you're looking at to throw in?
Well, I'm sticking with that same game, and I'm going Gerald Everett, and that's because he's playing the Broncos D, who have still allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends. Hunter Henry was my pick last week, and he didn't wind up playing, but Gesicki still finished as the tight end 11, got in the end zone. And without pretty much any receiving options for the Chargers, I feel like Everett is still going to be the guy. He's had 8 targets each week in the last 3 weeks. He just hasn't gotten in the red zone. And this is the best opportunity in all of football for him to do that. So hopefully he can get in there. But even if not, I feel like he still has a nice kind of baseline with all those targets he's probably going to be getting and a great chance of scoring. There's still a lot of other guys I'd play against him if you have a solid tight end on your roster. But, if you're looking to potentially pick somebody up, I think Everett is a great play this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's looking like Palmer's like iffy, like he may play, he may not play. I'm assuming Keenan Allen's out if that announcement hasn't already happened. I just don't see why they'd play him. No Herbert, he's banged up. Like they're looking for the future, and he's a vet. And Everett's just been sucking those targets up. Like it's not Quentin Johnson. There's just really no one else around, and Stick has just been targeting Everett basically. So he's someone that's at least getting you those points. Like you said, 8 targets, like that's nothing to shy away from at tight end.
No, that's great.
So for my tight end this week, I'm going someone who's kind of in that back end. And it's going to be Kyle Pitts. It's not the best, but last week, Heineke at least looked for him in the red zone. He got a touchdown. Like, it's crazy. He only had 3 catches, but 49 yards and the touchdown. They're playing Chicago, which is a good matchup for tight ends generally, at least fantasy-wise, And so that's what I'm doing. I think I don't really know exactly how the game's going to play out, but I just think with Heineke, he's a little more prone to maybe take a look at Pitts where Ritter was playing a little more conservative.
No, yeah. And I mean, you got to love like the Heineke moxie that he comes in there with when he's, diving for stuff and throwing his body all over the place. Chicago has, like you said, the 9th most points given up to the tight end, but they have been a really good defense as of lately. But, it's like that's why I'm afraid to play Drake London. But at tight end, if you're either picking up somebody to play or, you don't have great options, like Kyle Pitts can still get the job done because that is where the defense is a lot more susceptible. So,
and it's easier to look through, like when it comes to tight end, it's like, I think you can talk yourself into a lot more things at tight end because basically everyone sucks. So you're just kind of like looking for anything. Whereas like with wideout, it's like, with London, you're like, well, I could play London, but I got Gus Edwards. Like, I'll play Gus Edwards instead. Or like I picked up Zamir White. Like, I'll just play Zamir White in my flex and I'll hold London out. Whereas tight end, you're like, well, I guess I could play Andrew Becht of the Broncos, but I think I'll go with Kyle Pitts. Like, it kind of is what it is. And it's week 17, man. I would say, obviously, all these guys that Andy and I are giving you, we think have a chance to be good plays, but also in the end, stick with the guys that got you here. These are more if you're having to pivot or you're having that really tough decision and you're like, oh, I was deciding between Zamir White and someone else that we're not, Zamir White and Jalen Warren. And we're like, dude, Zamir White, I think he's got the better matchup. I think he's the play. But, play Saquon Barkley, even if, look what happened last week. Like, people would have told you to bench Barkley against the Eagles. Barkley had a good game. Like, that's why you play your good players is just most of the time that works out. So, Andy, who is your last quarterback of the last week of Flex Friday for the first inaugural season? Who are you going with? Let's end this with a bang.
Oh, this is a bang of some kind, man. And please have a better option than this. But you can pick this guy up off of waivers for sure. That's Jaren Hall. For every reason I said earlier for Ty Chandler, Green Bay has just been terrible on defense for the last few games. And Jaren Hall has possibly the best receiving core in the NFL with Jefferson and Hawkinson. And if Addison's healthy, he might play again. So, he's got great guys to throw to against a defense that is terribly struggling right now. I think 31st EVOA against the pass. And he's got a little bit of a scramble to him. He rushed for some yards down there at BYU. I wouldn't be surprised if he ripped off a couple runs. Green Bay allowing the 4th most rushing yards to quarterbacks. So he can get it down through the air on the ground. This 5th-round rookie's first start. I really hope you don't have to start him in your championship, but man, what a glory play. If he came in and he soaked this D like the BYU graduate that he is. So high risk, high reward. But he is the one guy who's on waivers who I feel like could really have a massive game where I think the other guys, it's like maybe they have an okay game, but he throws a ball to Justin Jefferson, a little screen. He could take it 50 yards. He gets to scramble for 30 or 40 yards against the Packers. And all of a sudden, you could be looking at a QB1 for the week. So,
yeah. And I'm going to give you the name of one of those guys on waivers who might not hurt you, but probably doesn't have the upside. And that's going to be Jared Stidham. Kind of same thing. Like, truth be told, if you're in a super flex league, this is way more relevant. I'm literally playing Jared Stidham because I had Trevor Lawrence. Like, all these quarterbacks are going down and people are making these decisions, especially in super flex leagues. I think one QB, you're probably not being forced into any of these guys that we're talking about today. But, for Stidham, it's going to be his first start in a while. I feel like he may have started at the end of last season, but it was for the Raiders. I do not remember his exact stat line. I'm not saying he's great, but the Chargers are a good matchup, right? 29th fantasy-wise. against the pass. So that is what, 32, 31, fourth best. Fourth worst, best, whatever. It's the good
either
one.
way.
And, I mean, I don't think the Broncos have a ton of weapons, but Peyton's a good offensive coach. He's not just going to throw this guy in there. They're giving him a shot to see if this is someone maybe they can move forward with. They're not just putting him in. Like, they benched Russ because they want to see if Stidham is okay. So they're going to at least try to set him up for success. And just like I said earlier, I think this game could get a little gross. I think there's going to be some TDs scored. I don't think either of these teams is great. Neither one of them really has anything to play for. So they're probably going to be playing loose, going for two, going for fourth down, like all of that kind of stuff that just leads to fantasy points.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And especially for, streaming guys, there's a lot of guys who have been on the waiver wire for a long time. And you kind of know, like with a Bryce Young or somebody like that, what you're going to get into. Whereas somebody making their first start, like when Joe Flacco did, like you never know when magic is going to strike. And I feel like sometimes the team gets up for these guys where it's like, hey, we got to be on our A game because it's this guy's, first start in a long time or he's coming back. And that they get a bump from that. So, yeah.
You said it perfectly. Like, I think if you're given the choice between Bryce Young and either of the guys we said, I'm going with Hall or Stidham. The one that was tough for me was I decided to go Stidham over Mason Rudolph. Just a matchup thing. I don't think Seattle's a bad matchup. I don't know. I mean, I don't really love either, to be honest. It's not something. It's just I've seen Mason Rudolph a bunch enough that last game, he was great last game, but
in his first start in a
while. Exactly, first start. But in the end, Andy and I wished you guys the best of luck. Bring it home or
a trophy,
put up a fight. But thanks for tuning in for 17 weeks of Andy and I. We had a blast doing this, and we're excited to start doing some more fun, silly stuff this off season. Little dynasty content, little fun stuff, and we're definitely going to keep coming at you. Hopefully, at least once a week with Andy on here, just to stay consistent. We may be taking some brief hiatuses while Andy goes without electricity for a couple months on his job. But,
you should have electricity at least. I don't know about service.
Service, exactly. He can plug his phone in, just
internet service.
We'll see. But he's going to come back with a journal full of advice for you guys.
I might have a lot of time to really think about my dynasty rosters. So
there's going to be some crazy trade offers made as soon as you get service. So heads up to everyone in a league with Andy. But we will catch you guys. 8 months from now for the next, we'll come at you in the summer, honestly, too, for redraft stuff. But that's it for Flex Friday 2023.